evening, and welcome back to PoliTalks. I am Frank Robinson, and we're back. And tonight we are going to be discussing women in the Virgin Islands. It is the month of March, and therefore it is Virgin Islands History Month, but it is also Women's History Month. So today we thought it appropriate that we take some time out to discuss and honor women in our society, discuss their various roles in our society, and maybe explore the idea of matriarchy here in Virgin Islands society. Um, my co-host Summer Sibley Brown should be here with me. Don't know where she's gone, but
No, I
here
was
she
thinking,
is.
I'm not going to be here with him. I like this backstage watching him talk to himself. Hello, good night, everybody.
Good
Welcome back
night.
to PoliTalks. I'm your co-host, Summer Sibley Brown, and tonight we talk about women. See a tree, 1, 2, 3, W, and how super we are.
So yes, well, it's March, so we thought it appropriate to talk about women in the Virgin Islands, and as a amazing woman who was made here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Summer, um, where should we begin with this conversation? Because I think throughout time, past, present, and definitely into the future, the Virgin Islands has produced some great women. And if they didn't produce them, we've also had great women leaders who have resided here um, in our territory.
So we could start with the iconic. I think everybody always goes to like the three queens, right? But there's also, I think, if Dr. Chen was here, who's also a great and amazing woman who resides and claims the Virgin Islands as part of her journey and home, Queen Brefu, right? So there are the three queens, like Queen Mary, Queen Bottombelly, and who's the
Queen
third
Agnes, Queen Matilda.
queen? Queen Matilda, right? So I think first place we see women that most people are aware of, right? The common story is 1878 Firebun, right? Like that's like three trailblazing, fireburning, iconic women. Hey, Kemet,
Good evening.
good evening. Who I think that people are familiar with, right? And honestly, I think that is also the expectation that Virgin Islands women will have. That I mean, that fiery bonnet down spirit, to some degree, right? So I mean, but then we could also talk about Ruby Rose and Lorraine Berry. We could talk about Senator Nelly and the honorables. Let me give them their titles, right? They were women, but they were also iconic people in the legislature, women in the legislature. I think we could talk about Senator O'Reilly in her own right, Tanya Singh, your mom, right? Sid's mom, Maurice's mom, Kemet's mom as a teacher in the education system. Oh my gosh, like when it comes to women, we have to mention, Stacey Plaskett. Like there is so many women. There's Sonia Dow, there's Frandel Gerard. I mean,
Asta Williams.
Asta. Oh gosh, Mama Asta. How you know what I mean? There's Jennifer Nugent Hill.
hmm
You know what I mean? There's Jennifer Matarangas King. Like there's Key Walker, Keisha Christian. Like you know what I mean? Like we have powerhouses in women, and like I want to say I feel like per capita, it's more, but we really do have a lot of strong, iconic women who play lead roles. So you know,
I agree. Yeah, and to go back to maybe it was before we joined, but um that I think a lot of the educators Um, there's so many more women as well, like the Marie Schusters. I think I on one of the previous shows I talked about how my mom gave Miss Schuster permission to beat me if I was ever out the line at Central High. I'm a grown high school. Okay, I was a freshman, so maybe not all that grown, and I'm short, so maybe. But regardless, the idea that the person, and I had, my mom had cousins that taught at Central, but the idea that my mother would entrust this other woman, Kent Moorhead was the principal at the time, and we had a relationship also, but she entrusted Miss Schuster, of all the other people at Central High, speaks to that idea, and how important and how prevalent women have been in our community, not just in Sikora, but across the VI. So yeah, shout out to all the names that we've been calling out. A shout out again to Jennifer Nugent Hill, who will tell people over and over again that she's my second mom. But there's a lot, when I think about just how blessed I am, and I hope that this situation still exists today, but how blessed I am that I had a number of these really powerful and women that have made significant strides in terms of our history, as a part of the village that helped to raise me. I'm, who I am today because of a lot of these women. So.
All right. Well, I'm right there with you guys. I mean, you really um, put out a long list there, and I think that the list can go even further. Um, One thing that I want to explore is that I think a lot of times I've probably misstated that I believe that our society is matriarchal. And I think that has to do with the fact that there are so many powerful women in leadership, women who hold significant roles in government. Even right now, our Senate president is a woman, Honorable Dr. Fred Gregory. Um, Many commissioners that we've had, the women entrepreneurs in the Virgin Islands. Just really a lot of boss bays going out here, and you know, through all my schooling, my principals were women. Most of my teachers were women. When I started in the workforce in the Virgin Islands, I would say it was many years before I had a man as my boss. Well, let me rephrase. I did have men as my bosses at a couple of jobs, but my supervisors were women. Here's another great woman who's watching with us tonight, Senator Genevieve Whitaker. We absolutely celebrate women here. Um, and I think that, keep up the good fight, Genevieve. Thank you for tuning in. Um, so for me, my perspective, um, growing up and well into my adulthood was like, what? In the VI, like, we got a lot of boss women. Women really run things. Hello, Shalana. Hope you could join us.
And Tanzira
Yes.
Kahina, yes, giving up Dr. Ken.
Dr. Chanzira Kahina. Um, so but in preparing for this show, I was looking up the fact that the word matriarchal might be a little bit off, and that we are more matrifocal.
Listen, Edney, yes. We can just shout them out as they come up. Sorry to throw you off, Frank, but
He was one of my teachers at Central High too.
You're not throwing me off.
Okay, good. So if I see it, I'll just shout them out because, like, in rarity,
I
just
think
like
it's important.
honor to all women in our society. because there's so much. And your point, Frank, is you were talking about your lens of women in power, and you've stated before that we live in a matriarchal society or something close to it, and you were saying something along that lines before. I was like, shout out Miss Edney.
Yeah, no, what I was saying is that I've always considered it matriarchal, but matriarchy is a social system in which, women hold the positions of power throughout the community. And I think I came across this term matrifocal, which talks about a family structure, which where the mother heads the families and fathers play a less important role in the home and in bringing up the children. So I think when it comes to raising the next generations, I do think that now I want to make this clear. I think that we are a little bit more matrifocal, but it does say fathers play less of a role. It doesn't mean that men are not playing a significant role in our society. It just in the way that things are set up, mothers are the head of the household and really have, you know, the say in what goes on with um, the children. And I think that's true, as it relates to the village as well.
So, like I didn't do the history for it of this, but I think, we were talking a little bit before we were on air, and the question is this by design or by default? I want to shout out Paulina Crosby, Colleen May Williams, Wendy Gonzalez, Tanya Singh. Like, as I remember them, I'm just gonna like say their names because, and I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my own grandmother and mother, like Dina Witt, shouting out to our mom, Valerie Sibley, Carmen Sibley, um, clearly Sibley. Like, I feel like grew up in a matrifocal, I guess if we're using that term, world where the women definitely are and were anchors, right? Were and are anchors. The question that I would have, and I feel like we'd have to do research, is it by design or is it by default, right? And what ancestral traditions are we bringing forward or highlighting that said this is how we all I mean, I don't know this is how we always function. It could be, right? It absolutely could
Mhm.
be. It makes sense to me. But I don't think that that's something we discuss on a regularly, like how our family structure functions. You
And
know,
how it got the way that it is.
yeah, and sometimes I think that, maybe this could be part of our cultural design, but there's a lot of focus on people being the only persons in homes carrying the load. And in this vein, today I just like to celebrate the versatility of the matrifocal home where the woman is the head and she's doing a lot because now it's not just raising kids, right? We have women out there who are equally on the front running corporations, being the head of nonprofits, and they're still like raising children. So are we, and I'd have this thing back and forth because I personally don't feel we are matriarchal society because I still see women fighting against sexism in terms of top level positions. I think our women, like, um, in
I,
terms of representation, right? I'm not saying that they're better than men. I'm thinking for the number of women we have who could lead, our leadership positions don't reflect them, right?
and
Like,
I think that's why I've switched gears in terms of the language, because one of the things that it says in reading about the matrifocal society is that the clear delineation is when it comes to power within the in the community of as a whole, and it's that at times women are still barred or have difficulty getting into those positions of power, even though they're really entrusted to run everything else, and organize the lives of you know their men, their children, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
so,
and
sorry,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
I
Gunnar.
was just gonna say that what I think is very crazy about that is that um, here again, it's been proven time and time again that we have some really brilliant um, women in the VI, and yet there's still that crazy larger, and I guess it all ties into like all of the systemic issues that come with us being what we are, an unincorporated territory that's been through um, centuries of just stupidness and nonsensical things. But it still blows my mind that we have, when we talk about equity and we talk about qualification, we talk about skill, we talk about what's being brought to the table. We still live in an unfair society where there's some men that get opportunities, or opportunities are afforded to some men that just aren't worth a thing. And that's saying it nicely. And to go back to your point, Summer, we have a number of women that would run circles around some of these individuals. And I'm confident enough in my manhood and what I know and who I am to say this, but there are a lot of women that could step into leadership roles in the VI and do wonders. But it's unfortunate that our larger society, including a number of women, won't afford them the opportunity to do that. And hopefully one day we get past where we are today.
So I think, as the only woman on this call right now, like one of the things is I do agree that there's things that are internalized about how women relate with women and about how larger society relates with women, and not just um, womanhood in its gender, but like feminist principles or feminism, these softer, more less, I mean, the only one I could think about is less patriarchal, less rigid way of running things, right? So I think that you were right. We live in a society that is anti-feminism, right? Anything softer, and even the women within it, even ourselves, like the first things that we do. But thank God that this is Women's History Month, and I could think about, if I have to think that of all the women it takes, not took, but all the women it consistently takes to pour into me to make me even capable of presenting myself in any way, shape, or form. I am constantly being cared for, nurtured, corrected, like that mothering and fierce kind energy, like, Tiffany Pennick, Emanuela Perez, like Marquita Webster, Zulima Lake, right? Like even people who are in my age group or would be considered contemporaries, right? Of people who we're doing things with. There are, some really boss women out there just, filling
Brilliant
space.
women.
Yeah, yeah. Did I mention like Deanna James? Did I mention, what I mean? Like these are people, like I've had the privilege of meeting people on a national level, like Tuesday. Tuesday Reinhardt is like an amazing woman. Christina Torres. Like I could go down the list of women that actually inform how I am beginning to process my own womanhood and see the value in it. And I don't think that, we should be talking about the contributions of females in the Virgin Islands. First of all, we should be talking about the contribution of Virgin Islanders to the Virgin Islands and the world all year long. Second, there should be a course or some type of focus that talks about specifically women in and from the Virgin Islands and their impact here on the whole. Because, I find that we talk about the men a lot, or at least more. When I say a lot, more. But what are the contributions of the women? I mean, how many schools, how many elementary schools named after women? I try and think. Proby Larson, Nelly Rivera,
Kobe Larson, Eulalie Rivera, Gladys Abraham,
Gladys
Evelyn
Abraham,
Williams,
Evelyn Williams. Go
Ola
ahead.
Mola.
hmm
I,
So right off the top of
I
our
don't really know
brainstorm,
names of schools.
six women of and from this community who had an impact in education or an impact in this community in a way that we felt it right to honor them. The agricultural
Excuse me.
market in St. Thomas, the Sandarilla Bungalow, the Sangarilla Thomas Bungalow, right, Miss Sandy? Again, we could talk about the Atali McFarlane, that's a library, right? What is the name of Juanita Gardine? Thank
Anita
you.
Jardine.
I mean, so what I think would be helpful is that we go through, like, we need to create some type of list, right? Now, when VI History Month comes up and Women's History Month comes up, like, there is a place that is like easily accessible where you could go through and just tap into the greatness of these women. Hey, Sid, another great
Talking about
woman.
great
Sydney
contemporary
Paul.
women.
What's up?
Welcome.
So, Summer, when you were when you were talking about contemporaries, I was about to shout out Sydney Sid and Camille and Kanuma Simmons and all the women at the Women's Coalition, Lavon, and Clemma and the entire crew up there that are
And I just
just
scream
amazing,
Carolyn.
amazing women. Carolyn Forno,
Saida Carter. How can we not say Saida Carter? Saida. You know,
Saida.
Iria.
Saida.
Like, get to
Eileen keeping the whole theater scene alive on St. Croix. Miss Curlis and Christiana Williams from back at St. Croix. My good friend Charisma Eileen, doctor in Chinese holistic medicine. It's just a long list of great women doing great things. So, especially now that when we look at this long list of our what we would call our peers, it's really cool to see like cool people doing cool things.
But even women in agriculture, right? Like thinking of Christina Gasperi and Yvette Brown and Shelley Bryn and Violet Drew, and Linda Hodge and Sue Lakos and Sarah Smith. And I mean, as I scour, I'm literally like walking the market to see how many names that I know because there's so many other women who I don't know but are represented there in that market space. And I just wanted to know there were two amazing young women this weekend selling their jewelry. And so shout out to them. I didn't get their names, but again, they're entering the beginning of their womanhood, but they're girls and they're amazing. They were making jewelry already, entrepreneurship. Women entrepreneurs in the Virgin
And
Islands.
along that line of the agricultural scene, a lot of the women and the wives in the fishing industry. A lot of the in most families, at least for the ones that I know in St. Croix, the men go out do the fishing and whatnot. But in terms of running the business side of that enterprise, it's a lot of the women and the wives. So.
Correct.
Hey, Sydney. Welcome.
Hey.
Yeah. Before I go start talking again, Sydney, would you like to give us your thoughts on the topic?
I joined a little late, so I'm not sure. I didn't get to tune in while I wasn't on, but I know what we're talking about tonight. And throughout the month, and in my work too, we've been looking at different ways of highlighting both at the same time. And I find it so easy. When I say both at the same time, I'm talking about and women's
Women and
history.
VI history.
Yeah, and it's actually effortless to find overlap between the two. It wasn't very hard for me to think of like how we easily just mentioned so many powerful women here. Even thinking back on our history, I had the opportunity to participate in some like reflective questions on Women's History Month, and from a cultural and with people not from here, right? Me answering the questions, I immediately thought back to like Queen Mary, the Firebun movement, like all of that stuff, because it's hard to separate the two in terms of impactful, influential moments in our history, and who was a part of that, or who was a catalyst in it, who instigated. You know what I mean? There's always women there, so it was like I never like besides this year, I had never really thought about them necessarily in the same light. But doing the marketing work that I'm doing right now, it was so refreshing to like find that so easy and grateful in a lot of and I have a lot of pride in it too, because there are some places where that's not necessarily the case, because when you think about Women's History Month and International Women's Day, it's to reflect on the need for equity, the need to empower and encourage women and young girls, and that doesn't happen in a lot of places around the world. So how lucky are we to have so many examples to look up to, and it shows in the products that you see now, the people that you see now, all of the young people that we just mentioned. So I was happy to talk about this tonight, because I'm so happy that it's such an effortless conversation,
Definitely. No, I just wanted to address what you said before when you said, is our society matrifocal by design or by default? And I think largely because we are descendants of Africans, we're the descendants of enslaved people, that it is by, I guess it's default because of a flawed design that was in existence for a few hundred years. And I think that it's the natural evolution of that same system at a time where, black men were just property. They were there to make children, but they weren't there to raise children. And in some way, shape, or form, I don't know the terminology that I'm looking for, but that's passed down in a way. So I think in terms of the women being the protector and raisers of our children, that has kind of by default flowed over into the last 150 years of freedom that we had. So that's what I thought. In this, I went back and looked at the article that I was reading about a matrifocal society, and I actually found just a little blurb that I did want to read. And it says, matrifocality arose, Godelier said, in some Afro-Caribbean and African-American cultures as a consequence of enslavement of thousands. Slaves were forbidden to marry, and their children belonged to the slave masters. Women in slave families often sought impregnation by white masters so their children would have lighter skin color and hopefully be more successful in life, lessening the role of black husbands. Some societies, particularly Western European, allow women to enter the paid labor force or receive government aid and thus be able to afford to raise children alone, while some other societies oppose women living on their own. So either way, that's just a little blurb that kind of backs up what my own conjecture was into how we ended up at this place.
We will have
go ahead,
to
Summer.
Hello,
Ooh, Winifred.
and Winifred Loving. I'm picking you up, Fiona. And while I have the stage, I want to thank Shauna Richards, Dr. Alison Degazon, Nicole Pacheco, like working it, because I'm thinking about people who support agriculture or the work. And Frank, we're gonna have to have a whole other show about what you just read, because while you were reading it, my gut was wrenching. That the fact that, I mean, I didn't do the research, but the fact that someone would say that women, black women, enslaved women, sought out white children, even if that was the case, it'd still be a mechanism of survival, right? Like you negating the fact that it would be because they wanted their children, not you, Frank, the person who wrote it. That's how I took it. So we need to have a whole sidebar discussion about this person's perspective on that particular behavior. Because, yeah, anyway, that was.
So, yeah, and I think one of the other things in the discussion about matrifocal that I wanted to add, I think, yeah, a discussion about whether or not it was by design or default could be a good discussion. But at the end of the day, like, the system, it kind of works for us. Like, given where we are, and given where I can speak for myself, and I think that's probably the best for somebody to just speak from their experiences. I'm fortunate that I had like women, and a number of women, a number of aunts, a number of biological aunts and second mothers and community aunts that that helped to raise me, because for me it worked out, and again, I can't speak for everyone, but just say for me it was a good thing. So yeah, whether or not it was by default or design is important to look at. There are a number of systems even after the whole emancipation, and where we are today, even contemporary societies today. There's a lot of systems that are in place to keep men out of the family, out of the household. And so I can't comment on the flip side, because I don't know what the flip side is. I haven't experienced the flip side. I know that I had men that are important in my life also. Again, we talked about Kent Moorhead, who's my principal at Central High. The Omega had a group that they named Noitakud, which is education spelled backwards. And they did a lot of work to reach out to young men and make sure that they, just learn things that they needed to know. But again, that the fact that our community needed a program like that speaks to, how the system has created opportunities where men aren't generally or readily involved. Those are my 2 cents.
I have a question for Sid, or a thought to bounce back and forth. And of course, I'm speaking to Sid because in this moment, we're the 2 women here, right? And so my lens is, and I think Frank and Kemet echoed this earlier, that they have no problem with our society, should we choose, like transitioning from matrifocal to matriarchal, right? Where we're saying we have awesome women, we should let them lead, right? What do you think that we are matrifocal or
Read
matriarchal?
that somewhere this week.
And would you
Let women lead.
what do you think it would take for us to be, what would society look like if we were the primary decision makers? Do you think things in the Virgin Islands would change that drastically if we were the power?
I have to think about that one, because maybe I have to think about it a little bit more. And maybe if I talk it out, I'll figure it out. It's hard for me because I come from a family, and like Kemet said, you can only really speak from experience. I came from a family where women were always in charge. From my mom, looking at some of my aunts. I have uncles too, but looking at my aunts, going up to my grandparents, I grew up only with grandmothers and great grandmothers. So my grandfather on my mom's side died when I was very young. My dad's dad I didn't know him very well. He was in Trinidad and died before I got to meet him in person, or passed away rather. And so I've always been in a structure where women were leading and leading well. I don't have a lot of examples in my life personally where women weren't open, you know what I mean, in terms of like collaborating with others. If you're thinking about leadership, right? I've always known women to make tough decisions, especially when you're taking care of your family, especially in my close circle where I have a lot of, really close friends who are single moms. I see them as people who know how to make tough decisions. That's something you need to have in leadership. I see, as a leader, you have to be open to other people's thoughts. I'm surrounded by women who do that. Not to say that I don't have men in my life now who don't do those things, but for the majority of my life, I've just always seen women in those roles. So it's very natural for me. Looking outside of my personal circle, and even looking in my professional circle, actually, I take that back. In my professional circle or my professional career so far, I've been under male leadership in most of the roles that I've been in grad school and at home. And I've been, well, I don't want to say it this way. Well, yeah, I don't want to say it that way, but I've been in professional relationships where I've seen great leadership from men in a close setting. So I don't know. I feel biased. Like I would want to say, yes. I feel like under leadership of women, I could see things working well, but I also my mind is going through like cultural considerations, and a woman in this culture would be very different than a woman in another culture. A woman with this history would work very differently than a woman with a different history of where they're from. So I still have to think that through, but it's hard for me because I feel biased. I've always looked up to women around me being in the decision-making roles, and it just feels very natural. So I don't see why not.
Big up Mara Nile, who just said everything is balanced. And I think that's what you were kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. And then again, I don't want to attribute to this to me being a woman, but like you said, like I want to be balanced. Like I'm very open to thinking, well, no, I know men who are very good leaders, you know what I mean? So I don't want to like do like a man bashing thing. I don't think that's fair, but what a man, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't. Maybe I'm trying to be too diplomatic about it.
No, so that's the whole point. Yeah. Go ahead, Clement.
And Sid, I think there's a lot of valid points there, like completely valid. The conversation there just made me start to think about some of the larger international organizations and whatnot that went through crazy times when the Me Too movement became a thing, and some of them responded by, well, let's just stick women in these roles. And the reality is there are brilliant women and there are brilliant men, and they are awful women and awful men throughout the world, period. But I think one of the advantages that we have, if this conversation is solely focused on the Virgin Islands, is that we've had, as Summer said, per capita, women have shown us over and over, time and time again, that that they are more than qualified to lead in some of the roles that we're talking about. And so I think, if it's difficult when you start to think about it strategically, because it shouldn't ever be, well, so and so should get this role because she's a woman, or so and so should get this role because he's a man. Although
exactly.
Oftentimes that's what happens now in the VI. And that does need to change, where yes, a woman should get that role, but it's not because she's a woman, it's because she's just
Because she's
brilliant.
qualified.
Yeah.
Qualified.
So I I agree with both you and Sid, right? One of the dangers, right? I mean, it's Women History Month, and I'm dreaming and imagining of the first female governor of the Virgin Islands, right? Um, yeah, and some of it is because I think it's time, right? And when I say time, time for consideration and nurturing and a nurturing nature, to be part of how we lead. But to Sid's point, I also know women who have extremely firm hands. Like, like when I see, like that's like I'm what disciplining her child. Like, like no, that's not happening, and it's really not happening, and that's that. Like there's, what I mean? And at the same time, having a level of consideration. And I don't think that men aren't capable of it. For me personally, I think that there needs to be space for that type of leadership. I see how hard, well, and in the past two legislatures, we've done differently with our electoral body. I see how the hard fight that women have to get elected. How do we encourage VI girls to be leaders of the future? I think absolutely, Fiona, that's the question. I think that's the moment we're in a matrifocal, matriarchal Virgin Islands History Women's Month conversation, right? Is acknowledging, I think one of the best things we could do is that acknowledging that leadership and greatness is not relegated to title, right? If we're talking about women, we're talking about all women, mothers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles, people who don't have children, people who never gave birth, like, but just helping people understand that, and these are facts per summer, right? So I'm not saying that they're rooted, but in anything besides my internal knowing, there is greatness in the female population as well as the male, but we're focusing on the females. And I hate even having to do that. I hate having to preface my compliment to women by saying, sorry guys, we get to talk about women today. That makes me feel like, why do I have to do that? Because when you give a man a compliment, or when we're talking about men, we never say, oh, sorry ladies, we'll get to you. Right? It feels quite natural to talk about males and what they're doing, and it's okay. And the minute we begin to talk about a woman, we have to default and justify a space for men. And I want to live in a Virgin Islands, and I want to live in a world, which is exactly what Sid and Kemet was referencing, that qualification and honor goes to where it's due. And I think that, Fiona, is part of how we get our girls ready for the future, is not predicating their leadership based on the fact that they're girls, but on the fact that they're ready, that you had a good education, you are a good person, you know what it takes to get the job done, you've honed the skill, right? And now you want to go do it. Not that, and I think that's part of the challenge, getting past the sex of the person.
Yeah, agreed. I'm so glad that you said that. It's about being unapologetic and confident in your abilities, right? You know, even when my mom was running for lieutenant governor in the last gubernatorial election, I remember that when we were marketing, we wanted to highlight, just as a coincidence at that time, there happened to be a lot of women in the Caribbean and Central America. There were a lot of elections happening at that time, and women were being placed in leadership positions, or they were like the majority of the local Senate or something like that. And we wanted to highlight them on her page, because we're still at a point, like Summer said, where it's just time, like these things should be happening already. And yes, we want to celebrate them. And we still had people in the comments saying, and it was like a double-sided or like backhanded comment where they said, why are you celebrating these people just because they're women? Just because they're women, they should be qualified. And this is from a man, but I could see it coming again of you dismissing. It still felt like you being dismissive of the woman and her qualifications. If she got elected, I'm assuming and hoping that she's qualified, and that's what we're celebrating, is the acknowledgement of the skill and talent, and the fact that's just being acknowledged, that there's a person in front of you who just happens to be a female or a woman, and has the qualifications. I find that even, what is it now, 3 years ago, that there's still that hostility in just celebrating a woman, you know what I mean, and being unapologetic about that. That's crazy to me, and that's happening here. And then there's something else that I wanted to mention. Oh, in my earlier comments, I also want to be unapologetic about talking about women, and not having to put a disclaimer around it. That's super annoying, and I'm glad that you said it so I can be aware of it now. But even when I'm reflecting back on my professional life, so far I've been in situations where I know there are boys clubs, like how you call them, boys clubs, and they're very protective of one another. And I wonder how we get around, we meaning women, get around those barriers. And because I feel, let me pose the question, to the question that the viewer had on how do we encourage women in our community and girls to be leaders. Do we live in a community where there are just men who look out for themselves more than women? I don't think so. But in these professional settings, I see these boys clubs that's very exclusive. And it's not about rank or experience or time inside wherever the institution is. It's just because the guys are the guys and they look out for each other. So I don't know. I'm posing that to see if that's a woman versus man thing, or is that a cultural thing? I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm trying to think about why I recognize those groups in the professional settings that I've been in, and why doesn't it happen with women in professional settings?
I think it's easy to recognize a lot of those groups and things that are going on because we do still sit under the umbrella of the United States of America, which is the patriarchy. I mean, it's a very largely patriarchal system. And so I think just like with many other issues that we discuss, when it comes to the role of women and where they fit into society, um, there's layers to it, in how things play out. I definitely think that, even though that I still believe that we're not matriarchal, but matrifocal, that there are still very much elements of a patriarchal society that exist within us, especially when it comes to what we portray to the outside world. And I don't know if that's just because, the system that we live in terms of our government and structure has been designed as such. It's something that we have taken, it has been given to us, and we've adopted it and utilized that to move forward. So, I see how that can definitely still exist.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it is definitely system, and how there's the reality, which is what Frank was talking about earlier, which is likely more matrifocal, and then there's a pseudo reality that's unfortunately happens to be shoved down everybody's throat, which is the patriarchy, from not the majority, but those that are in control of power and want to keep control of power, and that's why those those groups exist. It goes back to one of the things that a thought that I had and I shared on my page, and it's a thought that I have often. Um, the absurd society that we've created, where entertainers, whether it's athletes or musicians, or and some of them you can't even call them musicians today, um, because it's just a catchy beat with some gibberish on top of it. I won't go into WAP or any of the other really lame songs that the society has rallied around and thought it was the coolest thing. But it goes back to that thought that I had, like, how have we created this society where um, entertainers are valued so much more, like people that are, whether it's acting or what, but they're valued so much more than people that are teaching, that are in the agricultural field, that are in the sciences. The fact that doctors are in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt when they finish school and they begin to practice to help people. Um, but you could drop one hot song with a collab with whomever with a nice beat, and you're all of a sudden a millionaire. And the answer, it's something I had in the back of my mind, but one of my friends from Fish and Wildlife mentioned, it's the intention of creating this society the way it is and keeping it the way it is. The less people are educated and know, the more that they're entertained, and the more that you flash things in front of their eyes so that they don't think about what's really happening in the world. The more you can continue to perpetuate this crazy, I don't want to call it the American dream, because it's not everyone's American dream, but it's the boys club at the beginning of the foundation of the country. It was their dream that they have this thing that belongs to them, and they will exploit a number of people to gain and to create wealth. And to continue to hold onto that wealth, people shouldn't think about reality and what's just and what's equitable and all of those things. They should just, work their 9 to 5 or work their 8 to 5, live their life, and let us be at the top 1% or whatever it is. And I think that's a big part of why that system does exist. So it goes back to we were talking about earlier, the difference between women who have again shown time and time again that they are more than capable, and in some instances, can you imagine if we had a Plaskett Nugent Hill team running the VI? I mean, I don't want to throw any of them like out there under the bus or anything or feel a kind of way, but the two of those in terms of where they are in their fields right now are two of the most brilliant first rounders that I personally know, and fortunately, I can call them good friends and call Jennifer Nugent Hill mom. But could you imagine like where the VA would be if that energy was making decisions? I'll just leave that up there for y'all.
Yeah, I actually can. That's why I said we need some women governors up in this. And the reality is that we know that people probably won't vote for two women. Right? That's I think that's kind of what Sid was addressing. It shouldn't be that because they're women they get the title, but we still have stigmas around a woman's capacity or women's capacity to do something. To answer Fiona's comment about how we help our girls, I think one of the ways we help our girls lead in the future is we also have to pay attention to our boys, right? Like, and they understand that they don't feel threatened by successful women, right? I think, so I'm going to go like way back to the Bible. Like Lilith was demonized because of her power. And she became in the stories, like, anytime in history where you find a powerful woman, she is demonized, she's ostracized. Even in fables, she's turned into a witch or Medusa or some person who had so much power that it created a shadow side. But we don't often talk about our men. Where's the shadow side of Hercules, right? Where's the shadow side of the other gods and goddesses across multiple pantheons? Did I say it correctly? That don't demonstrate there is something wrong with a woman having power or having it all, right? And so I think so that's one of the things that we have to do is begin to allow people to embrace their fullness. The women of the past has been the leaders in change in our history. We still have strong vocal women in the society that we should support. We do still have strong vocal women in this society that we should support. And we need to teach girls how to support girls. We need to give them space to be bold and to try new things and to fail. And we also need to, we also need to give our youth an opportunity not to be distracted by labels and to be focused on readiness, right? And to be focused on competence and to cross celebrate each other. Because I think when we do that, then women leading in the future or men leading in the future, it won't be about their gender identity, right? That's, I think, what we have to change. We have to prepare a Virgin Islands that is not focused on gender assignment or gender identity and is focused on capacity and competency and effectiveness and character, right? And that comes from investing in them from the time that they're in elementary school. I was just talking, we as women have internalized a lot of, and when I say we, I have to check myself on doing it. So I'm not throwing shade at anybody. Internalized self-hate around our own feminism. The first thing we do, right, is you hear something good and you start kind of dishonoring the person. And I find that we do that to women first, right? Oh, you know about she? I have to check myself on that. I don't know about her. I might know what I heard of her, but even if I know one thing she knew when we was in high school in 10th grade that I thought was uncouth, that's not her whole life story. That was 10th grade, 5 minutes or something, you remember? Like, we're not looking at credentials. We tend to find a level of comfort from detracting from each other, and I find women do that a lot. And I am saying it because I'm one of them, and I have to check myself and be checked. Like, you're not in competition with the next girl. She could do great things. Doesn't take away from you.
Can I mention something? To the comment we just had too, it made me think about, us thinking about women in our history who have had strong voices. Some of them, not you can count on maybe your hand, who have been in leadership positions, right? But a lot of them that we think of are very grassroots, right? They did a lot of the groundwork to get things done or to create those impactful milestone moments that we're thinking about. And that's how I always think about women, not just here, but in general, where we do a lot of that groundwork, and we're praised for that because we're, strong. You use the words again, strong, we're resilient, we're like tough. And it's sort of like there's like a threshold to the praise. Like, yes, you're really good for this, but why haven't we broken that ceiling, right? And then another thing, when you said, Summer, as a woman, you tend to like have to check yourself, not just when you're maybe thinking, whatever about another woman who either has been celebrated or had a success, when you should really be supporting it. But even with myself, sometimes I think about, the work that I'm doing. And sometimes it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of groundwork. And I messaged this to my sister. I'm gonna big up my sister Camille. For Christmas, she got me this self-care book that had like a little mini book of affirmations. I'm gonna have to pull it up again. And one of them, and I think about women in this way all the time. One of them was a quote by a woman named Sharon E. Rainey, and it said, "No more martyring myself." And I tend to think about how we we support everybody. We lift up a lot of people. When you're talking about family structures, when you're talking about at work too, a lot of the times, and we tend to find ourselves okay in that struggle of holding everybody up and being okay with, some people might say, oh, you're very humble, but it's like a not a brainwash, but I don't know if indoctrinated is the right word, but there's like a mental structure around you not giving yourself the value that you deserve, and not vocalizing, not being unapologetic and confident in saying, I've been doing all of this work, I deserve to do this, or I have the value to perform this at this level. And for some reason we haven't reached that. When you think about, governor and these other high level leadership positions, and I'm not saying like we could count a lot of women right now in leadership positions in the Virgin Islands, so it's not like they're not there, but the big, like, governor is a big one. Like, why haven't we gotten past that yet? Why haven't we gotten past that? What is the block? Because there are qualified women who may think, and who there are community members who tell them all the time, like Kemet said with like throwing Stacey Plaskett. My mom has heard it too. Other people I know who have heard it too, but there are some who have to take a second thought about it. Why do we have to take that second thought about it? Is it because you don't believe that the community is ready for a woman? Why is that a thing? But I say all that to say is that martyring quote, I feel that here, and maybe I feel that as a woman just in general, because we do a lot of that groundwork, and it's great to celebrate that. But when are we allowed? Not allowed, but when do we take the positions that we should have the opportunity to take? Yeah, I just want to say.
When do we get to be like, because the women that do take it seems like they are not well received, right? So they end up, people have a lot to say about, it's funny in this world still, a man can be firm and he can speak his mind, and he's just being stern. When a woman does it, she's being aggressive, she's a bee, she's hard to work with, she's all these things, right? And I'd be like, he just behaved in the exact same way. Why is it okay for a man to speak his truth unapologetically in this day and age? And some of the women who we celebrate, like Ruby Rose and Lorraine Berry, they was quite no nonsense. Like, they could have hold their own with anybody, that kind of way. And I think, like, people would be like, they had really strong, no nonsense personalities. And it feels like, so I'm going to say what it feels like. I don't know if it's true. It's almost like you can't step into a leadership space and allow yourself to be soft and feminine. You actually a woman has to walk into a leadership space behaving like a man. Like, she has to come in. If she can't come if she's a pink nail polish and soft spoken and dainty but extremely intelligent. It's like she's setting herself up to be played. So she has to wear the power suit. Like, I think she has to wear the power suit. She has to be beautiful. She has to be healthy. She has to be fit. She has to be bossy. Like, she has to put on all these personas to walk in the space of leadership. And then when she does it, she's still get talk about, right? And so, like, for the women who do that every day, who compete in this, in Virgin Islands, women who are working in the Virgin Islands space, who are working in entrepreneurship, working in philanthropy, working on a global stage, and every day they have to put on all of those things, right? And still fight to make space for themselves or others. Like, I salute you, because that's not easy. And then people don't like you, the man them don't like you, and the woman them don't like you.
Listen, I have a good example, right? Because I fight this a lot too. But on top of the fact that I look younger than I actually am, but I even just over the past 3 years, I find myself when I'm in meetings, I lower my voice, like the bass in my voice, a lot more. And I already project really well. I don't have a soft spoken voice, but I find myself doing that and like talking in a very like staccato way, like very firm, because nobody listens to me if I'm not talking that way. And then I get responses, you know, where they're like, wow, Sydney, like you sound really, you know, are you okay today? And I'm like, it's because you're not listening to me and I have to talk like this. But that's like, you're putting on a whole act just to be heard. That's exhausting. So
It is
exhausting.
I will say, before I was able to gain my voice and you know, just assert myself by learning the game of speaking over, because I have a powerful voice. I would say the majority of my younger years, like I get it, and I especially see like we in the Virgin Islands, one, we got a culture of talking over one another. Like as things heat up, we talk, talk, talk. Whoever talking the loudest is the one who's right, even if he's the wrongest in the entire room. Wrongest, whatever. And and then you know, I believe that it's twice as hard for women at times, because like you said, you got to step outside yourself. If you are, you know, a little more quiet, you got to puff up your chest, you got to make your voice deep, you got to like, hey, you know, listen up. And it's like, why should I even have to do that if we're having a, you know, an important conversation? So
I'm trying to have a voice like Vin Diesel, right? So hearing Vin Diesel over there with like the deep masculine voice saying that, yeah, we. By the way, we need to have a conversation that's terrifying for people in the Virgin Islands. I just heard this today. A bunch of people screaming at each other. So that talk over culture thing is so real. The person who gets the loudest in the meeting is not the person who's telling the truth the most clear or should be followed. People, but I listened to people do that today, and I was like, what is that? It sound like I was like, oh my god. Anyway, so that should be a whole show.
Yeah.
And back to the topic.
It should.
And Summer, to your point, right, when you were saying earlier, when a woman is speaking firmly or with confidence or what all those things, and people call them aggressive or like all of these other negative names. Imagine a Virgin Islands woman on top of that, because of our accent and because of the personality that is a Virgin Islander or a Crucian or, you know, like whatever. Because expressive people, imagine a Virgin Islands woman having to do that extra, and then it sounds even more emotional or crazy or all of these other ridiculous things that they call it. But that's just culture and how we talk. You know what I mean? So it's like there's like a double barrier there almost with being a woman and being a Virgin Islands woman.
So I think what, you know, I had a conversation with some people this week. And one of the things, two people in two separate conversations that they mentioned to me, because, you know, I am unapologetically a Black Caribbean woman. I'm afraid to name my struggle. And they were like, well, it's not because you're Black, but it is because you're a female. And I didn't want to go into it then. But when I heard it twice, I think there's something that needs to be understood. The place in which we come from, right? Originally, like my inner knowing is like, yeah, royalty. But what they have done to us during the journey of colonization and capitalization and all the things, you know, like the experience, the 400-year experience, plus it's more than 400 years, started in the 1600s, right? They put the Black African woman at the bottom, right? If women on a whole are undervalued, they ensured that we were it was systemic. So when we see one of our peers, one of the descendants of the enslaved, especially, you know, with beautiful melanated skin, that's a super hard fight that they have fought, and that deserves honor and praise. Because if you read the history of what not only we endured as women, but where we are positioned and what we have endured as women of color, yeah, it's not the same. right? And I just need to name that it's not the same. And so the women in the Virgin Islands, also coming from one of the remaining Black colonies, also coming from this super small place that have all of these challenges and are going into the world and kicking ass. Hell yeah, we need to be like, and we as a people need to have a level of pride in that, because it's a double entendre almost. It is from whence we came, and it's from whence we came, right? It's the greatness that we are the origins, you know what I mean? The greatness that is our origin, but the hard fought win, that because people refuse to acknowledge it. Not that they don't see it, but there is a culture of refusing to acknowledge it or minimizing it and minimizing the struggle, right? You know how much mothers, single mothers, or even if you were married, people sacrifice so their daughters could have the opportunity to get education. Do you know what I mean? Do people making sacrifices so people could be entrepreneurs? So people, my mother makes sacrifices so I could run a nonprofit, right? She makes sacrifices like a run a nonprofit. It's not even about, I'm not even talking about what you do for your 16-year-old, or, those obligatory years, the sacrifices that mothers and grandmothers and parents make to ensure that daughters and sons reach their ultimate best. Like, we really need to celebrate women more than in 1 month, right? I mean, we just, this, like, we should honor like, maybe we could make that PoliTalks thing. We should honor and highlight a woman from the Virgin Islands, even if it's small, once a month, and we should invite her on the show, because that's a way to take this conversation out of the confines of Women's History Month.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, and what I was gonna going back to the whole political talk conversation that we were having, I think one of the things that might be cool to consider, and I don't know who the right group would be to do this, if during the election season, if there were groups that would either, I don't know if developing an IQ test might be like on the far end, that I probably doesn't make. Yeah, I might ruffle some feathers. But if there was a clearinghouse with people's resumes, if you're running for office, and I don't think that's unrealistic, but if there was somebody that could create a clearinghouse of, these are all of the people that are running for office, and these are their resumes, and not their platform, not what they want to do and what they stand on a soapbox and preach about, but this is how they are qualified to lead. They're qualified to make tough decisions, because I mean, the same thing should be done for a president of the United States. You hold the power of being able to push a button and
blow up your head.
there's that. And you should have certain, in my opinion, you should have certain qualifications and a certain background that says you are qualified to do this. Then we wouldn't have had the last 4 years that we had. But I think it's important for us to start thinking about that for the Virgin Islands also, because, and I hope I don't get Sydney's Bomb in trouble for this, but if we had done that when she ran as lieutenant governor with that team, there wouldn't be a question of like who the best person, and it takes out, I think it removes a lot of that, the people that might have said, yeah, but we used to having a guy as the governor, and that's the way it should be, or that's the way it's gonna be. I think it would take away a lot of that if we just said, here are how they stack up against each other, and you can make your decision based on that. And for those that are, the catch is, those of us that are progressive and would likely vote for a person based on their qualifications are likely the ones that wouldn't vote for a guy over this brilliant woman, just because he's a guy. But I think, you know, we might get some others to start thinking along those lines also. Again, making based on qualification and not based on, you know, who had the fish fry or who had, you know, Cool Sessions brass, and all of the other really just like we've created this society where a lot of people think that's what's important in terms of running a legit society and making decisions for a few 100,000 people, but it's really not. That's not where it's at all. And we really need to run away from that fish fry jam mentality, and really start looking at what are the qualifications and, you know, who's this person that I want to entrust with the capability to make decisions that are going to impact my life and the lives of everybody that lives in the Virgin Islands.
Just like drop the mic there.
Press the mute.
I was just gonna say that again. I don't know if I'm just trying to be fair, but see, and that's again me doing a disclaimer. But thinking analytically, like you're talking about, Kemet, even the women that I don't know if I should say it this way. I gotta be careful too. But I feel like I recognize, especially in those election season times, I notice those who are thinking a little more analytically and deeply about whatever the questions that are posed or like the challenges, and analytically isn't just necessary. Well, thinking analytically is deep thinking, right? But it's also being open and having your mind open to listening. And again, it's me like thinking back again. It's a culture thing, but I tend to be around a lot of women who think that way, and when I compare them to men that I know, there are more women who just think that way a little bit more. And I don't know if it's the nature of what a woman does in her roles and the multiple roles that she has, because I will confidently say that women take on a lot of different, a more diverse set of roles than men do. When you think about family structure, when you think about in the workplace too, when you think about, you know, in terms of your body and having to take, like, there are just a lot of other things that we have to think about. And from a mental standpoint, I feel like it allows me, I think, and I had to answer this question for a questionnaire, is like, what are your strongest characteristics as a woman that you feel you have as a woman that you're proud of? And I thought about the fact that I feel so versatile because of the position I am in as a woman. There's a lot of negatives, right? And I want to bring this up too, and I don't know if we'll have more time to talk about this, but I've been watching a lot of films about women in just natural settings where they have to handle all of these things coming at them, right? Meaning walking down the street, I as a woman I think about all of these scenarios that go through my head about protecting myself, being in a space by myself and I'm not sure, like just getting on a bus, I have to think about people watching what I'm wearing. Am I sitting down right? There are all of these things, right? So there's the negatives that your brain is firing about. There's, you know, a single mom thinking about how she's going to feed her children, go to work, figure out how to go to school. There's, on a professional standpoint, we have to think about our voice and how we sound, and if we sound, all of these things. So from a mental standpoint, I feel like as a woman, your brain allows you to, when I say brain, it makes it sound medical, but I don't know if it's a medical thing, but like we have to think so much more versatile about things that it allows us to be more open to what's going on around us and being aware of that, on a philosophical level or political level or social level, or, you know, like thinking social economically, like we take in a lot more because of our position and role as women I feel like it just requires so much more of us. So I say all that to say that, you know, when I listen to many of the women in our communities who are running for leadership positions, looking to be hired for certain positions, appointed to certain positions, I tend to recognize and acknowledge many of their abilities to think more deeply and more analytically that I don't necessarily see as much in men. And maybe that's just not here. Maybe that's everywhere. But as a woman, I feel like that strength allows me to think just more deeply and more openly and widely about things.
But I also think, we think more synergistically, right? We think
Mhm.
across things because we have to, right? When you are in a matrifocal society and now you've entered the work world, right? And for people just joining, we said matrifocal is a society where the focus, it's not necessarily the power is given to women, but the focus in the household. More of that focus and responsibility is given to the woman as mother, head of household. When we live in a society that's predicated on that, and then she's also in the workplace, a mother has to think, or that woman is thinking across multiple lenses before she executes a decision. Because before I take a job, I have to think what my children gonna do, where they gonna go, how they gonna eat, how my husband gonna feel, or mate if it's not a husband. You're doing that. How does this affect my finances? Like how does it? You're just naturally, and if you're caring for someone, not to say that again, see the justification, not to say that men don't do this. Look at how natural that is. I need to work on that. But
Oh,
like,
I'm
right? It is. But so I do think that what we have is we think across, we weigh decisions across a cross section of things before we make it. I think by default that is a very uh, so I won't say womanly, but I will say it's a feministic view. Like it's divergent where a masculine or patriarchal view of something is very linear. It's straight to the point. It's sticking on task. It's staying, you know what I mean? And so you're here as opposed to here. Like we want to go all around, like, okay. And like you could think about decisions on like when I go places with my husband, Stephen wants to be in and out. He wants to get it done, and I want to explore. I'm like Stephen think grocery shopping is the list. And I think, well, we're here. What else do we need? Isn't this really nice? Do you want to talk about it? And he's like, woman, let me go. And so I just think that's a very, it's how we're trained. It's not necessarily how either, like again, gender assignment. It's how we train people to think. And so I agree with you. In short, very long way to say, Sid, I agree with you that women have the ability to be very analytical, and Via is not allowing Darren to live his best life right now. I'm seriously upset. He trying to time. That's the wrongest thing they ever do to he. And all right. Women are also hilarious. Did we say that? We have great senses of humor. Especially ones who are on PoliTalks, I'm just saying. And I want to say, I think women are the original multitasker. Like, I know people say multitasking isn't a thing, but we definitely could juggle multiple things at one time.
Yeah, that goes back to having that like multi-layer, I don't know what the word is. Summer's more articulate than I am. But like, you're able to handle so many things at the same time. So, and you apply that to every part of your life. Every part of your life. And because you have all of these different thoughts, routes, possibilities going through your mind, you have to be open. You have to, that's just part of having that power. You know what I mean? Like you have to be open to considering things. Let me just leave it there.
So I'm going to be really horrible right now. This joke is going to be in poor taste, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So what he's saying is if we had a female governor, we'd have been able to deal with GRS, the hospital, WAPA, and maybe fix our road? I don't know, right? I don't know. Multiple things. I'm just
Uh,
saying, people, vote women. Huh.
what about the internet, though? Think we could fix that?
You know something? Maybe. I'm
You
just attention to multiple details. And hey, people, if you don't want to go all woman governor, let's pick a male governor who understands his cabinet has to be filled with females, right?
Or can multitask and multitask in a way that actually is productive, not multitask in the anyway.
And I am not, I like to preface it with I'm not coming for anybody in particular this evening, but I am coming for patriarchy. And so I think that it's
One,
either we understand that our the representation of our society is highly feminine or highly, we have more women than men. We have plenty qualified women. So when we fill in those cabinet positions, the women need to be represented in it to show the ratio in our society, or we just need to then elect a woman. Like those are my two options. And today is the show is all about women, so I don't feel like I have to be qualified women. I don't feel like I have to be. I'm not going to be apologetic about that. This is no apologies day, right? Women should be leading in our local government.
what,
Period. And point blank. They
I,
shouldn't be the
I
assistant
read
commissioner.
something
They
this
should be the
week that said
commissioner.
let women lead. And I
What you said?
mean, I agree. I said I read something this week that said let women lead. I saw it a couple of times. I don't even know where I saw it, but I I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I think that just like Kemet said it, I don't think that or maybe it was Sydney, but letting women lead doesn't mean that men aren't allowed to anymore. But I think it just puts men and women at the same level of equity when they're coming to the table, and it's like whoever has the highest qualifications will be able to get through. And it won't be like, well, she might be a little bit smarter than him, but he's a man, and da da da. So it's close enough where we should hire him and give her a secondary position or something like that and pay her less and all of the nonsense that exists in America and of course throughout the world and in our society where women seem to be undervalued and you just said it so well, Sydney. But women do so much more than we give them credit for. When women are put through the ringer of life in so many arenas, like you said, from your own body, from how you have to be raised growing up, to how society treats you. I mean, like you said, there's so many layers and barriers that women are just kicking down every day. So they are to be commended, I think, and given the same opportunities that are afforded to us, to men.
So, sorry, I just had a thought, right? We have to, I'm back on Fiona's comment about preparing girls. And I was like, it's actually, so I flipped the question in my head. How do we prepare our society to receive leadership from women? Right, from qualified ready women. It's I think the girls, we do a good job of preparing them. I think they come ready, and like Sid referenced, many of them meet the ceiling and spend, once they get there, dedicate their lives to breaking it, right? And it almost feels like the ceiling is self-replenishing, right? You kick down one layer and in short order, there's another layer, and that layer is now reinforced by whatever capitalistic patriarchal boys club blah 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 BS. And so now the glass is twice as thick, and people are kicking their stilettos and their keds and their boots, like, and their thigh highs, like, all against it all at the same time. And so the question is, how do we prepare our society for the women who are ready and interested in leadership, And how can we, not just women, but how can those of us who see the value in it help remove those barriers together? And one way is naming them. Naming when the struggle is not real, when the struggle is fake, when it's a construct and it's created to hold people back for no absolute reason. It's calling BS
But
BS.
don't you think that in a way we are already prepared to receive it and we just don't realize it because of our indoctrination and the way that we feel society is set up? But because we're so matrifocal, I mean, really and truly, everybody that most of the people that prepare us to go into adulthood, that early first 20 years of your life, are going to be women.
Listen, I just want everybody to know on Facebook that extra deep voice is not me trying to be commanding. Everybody were watching me, I'm like, so she get rid of her beard and now she sound like Frank. What's going on? sorry, sorry. I just, I like to correct jokes.
But
Oh my God.
yeah, so Frank, I think so. What I was gonna remind everyone listening is to the point that Sydney mentioned. It's a reminder that unfortunately what our society does is it discredits the qualified woman, and it empowers the pseudo intellect and the pseudo qualified, the very not qualified man, and that's something that's systemic, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And I will double back on that whole idea of, you know, a clearinghouse with qualifications, at least for the political arena. I think that's something very critical that either the elections office should think of. It's probably not something that, you know, by law you can do. I don't know what the books look like, but even if it's not them, another group should do that. But I think like a campaign is needed that highlights powerful Virgin Islanders that you should give a chance based on just their genuine and honest qualifications and also their desire to want to create a better Virgin Islands, because I think that's the other part, right? So you have a lot of, and it's not just for the top office of governor, but a lot of the commissioners, also a lot of cabinet members. You have a lot of not qualified individuals that receive these positions because one, they knew so and so. Two, they they make the best pound seasoning for the fish fry, and they cook their Johnny cakes without Gucci links. Three, um, you know, it is what Sid said, that the boys club that just needs to go away, because like, don't ever give me a position because I'm a guy. Give me a position because I'm qualified for it, and that's Kemet Lewis. So I think we need to focus on that and how we increase awareness. Educate isn't the right word in this context, but how we increase awareness, so that the entire community knows that we have these brilliant people that may not be recognized, that are often soft-spoken and don't brag about themselves, but we have this group of people that are just go-getters, that, like I said, one, are super qualified or overqualified for some of these roles. You know, we could have the next Mia Motley of the VI pop up, but you know, we haven't given her the chance to do that yet.
She's so awesome. I just want to say that.
But yeah, but so we need that one side, the people that are qualified and whatnot. But then we also need the other side, the people that really have the best interests of the Virgin Islands people at heart. when making decisions and whatnot, because that's the other part that's missing in the boys club, because it's often, how can I get this job so I make a good salary, I get all these kickbacks from all these companies that come in and want to do business with the VI, and the corruption thing is real. I've seen it. And we just keep spinning the wheels, and again, a lot of this is why we are, as much as we don't want to call the VI a third world place, this is why we haven't advanced in all of those systems that Summer talked about, whether it's GRS or WAPA or the conversations that we had about WAPA last week is just retarded. And there is a common denominator with all of the people that were the head of the board or the head of the agency. I think so. They need some women to step in there too, and not just women because they're women, but people that can come in and really reimagine and re-envision what our water and power authority could look like, because what's been there for eons is not working, and it's the reality is it's not one woman at the top there, and so we should use those examples to show us that this system has been forced on us, where we believe that men have all the answers. It's that's 1548 thinking. We're in 2021 and we need to catch up with the rest.
We are in 2021. Right? First of all, Kemet, this is a very serious comment to you. If you don't know how to make Gucci Link Johnny Cake, you won't get elected in St. Thomas. So don't dismiss them. Maybe you don't want them on St. Croix, but there's a whole island of working people who want Gucci Link. I'm tired. I'm tired of you coming for me. And so I just want to name, right?
Summer, you don't know how to make
fries Gucci in on my sister island.
You don't know how to make Johnny Cake, Summer.
I don't know how to make Johnny Cake, but my ancestral legacy that is tied to those Gucci Link Johnny Cake knows that people get voted in because of them. I just know. So I'm just saying, we're gonna put some respect on that Gucci Link Johnny Cake tonight. No, but seriously, I couldn't help it. Sorry. I had to.
I wear it around my neck.
Big ropey 6 Johnny Cake. Anyway, I'm gonna get serious in a moment.
You can imagine a gold dip Johnny Cake. Frank?
We don't have a Johnny Cake competition and the prize be a golden Johnny Cake.
With powdered sugar with gold flakes in it.
Anyway, we digress. We were talking about women and women's history and women's role in the Virgin Islands and flipping patriarchy on its head and being unapologetic and celebrating the women across the territory who continue to do super uber amazing things every day. And because I was so busy laughing about Gucci links, I forgot my real comment. So I'll shut up and let somebody else talk and hope that comment comes back.
I will make a comment that I thought about just to put on the table when we think about accepting women in leadership roles. We also have to think about all of the things that women have to think about, right? In me wanting to be, I'm talking about a metaphorical me, not me personally. But in me as a woman thinking about, I want this career and I want to be at this level. A lot of women have to think about sacrifices that they have to make to do that, which is so unfair, right? There are some women who say, well, I want to be at this level, so this means I either have to put off starting a family or having children, or if that's what they want to do, they have to think about all of these things and giving up a lot of how they interact with their friends or family, because I feel like, as a woman, again, you have to work so much harder to do a lot of things or to prove yourself, whereas men don't have to do that. And I just wanted to put that on the table to say that again, we think about so many things through a different lens and have to consider all of these other things and sacrifices which men just don't have to do. And it's totally unfair because it diminishes your ability. It dismisses, or I don't know if diminishes is the right word, but it takes away from your ability to do, you know what I mean? Like maybe you can be the governor of the Virgin Islands and have 3 children in elementary school. You know what I mean? Some people think, oh well, that's just too much to handle. She can't handle all of that by herself, or she can't handle having all of these other things that she's doing to do this one really big thing. Whereas we don't have to think about that with men. So I just wanted to put that comment on the table because some people don't realize that we think about those things too, and that's unfair.
Right, it is unfair, and I want to say, let's look at Delegate Plaskett, right? She is a mother, she is a wife, she is, competent, she is up there swimming with the big dogs, making waves, standing up, representing the Virgin Islands well, and still making time to cook roast pork, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying being that combination of woman is not, must take all of her time, right? I should have still made time to look good doing it. Like, just let's name that too, right? Like, so I think it can be done. And I think those are considerations, you're right, that we don't talk about when it is our male counterpart going up for a job. I think paternity leave should absolutely be a thing, right? Like when it'll take a family or it'll take 2 people to make children. So the consideration of when the mother alone has to do all these things, like I think those are some of the places where we have to balance out. And we also need to enter into the 21st century. When I go away to food systems conferences, there's a baby breastfeeding room. There are mothers, because 90% of the food system world is women. People talking food system and making waves and having changes, it's women. And it is the most dynamic space because I have seen presenters and keynote speakers have their children with them, and they have time and space to have their baby at the conference. Like there are babies that I knew when they were in their mother's stomach, and 4 or 5 years later, they are 5-year-olds that I have a relationship with, and the workspace doesn't punish them for being a mother. It applauds them for being a mother. And like there's room and places for the children to be. And I just think that we're looking at a really antiquated system that says who you are as a mother and a woman has to be separate from your professionalism. It's absolutely not true. These are some of the most professional and competent women I've ever met. They're making waves and they're raising their children and breastfeeding. And the workplace has made contingencies for that. Like the first time I see a breastfeeding room at a conference, I was like, what is that? What is that gloriousness that is happening over there, right? I was so in awe of the thoughtfulness of what they were proposing because they embraced the whole woman. And I think that that's something that, when I worked for Royal Caribbean, there was a daycare on site. And that was like in the early 2000s, right? But they had already made it so that women didn't have to be far from their babies, right? And we just don't consider it. That there's so many community engagement meetings in the States that I've attended that they have activities for kids there while they have mothers in the room working. So there's playstations and coloring rooms and competent people who can assist, and mothers can come in and out of their role, right? So I just think that we need to step up that lens to allow women to attain their best without making them feel some type of that they have to carry an extra burden, or there's not a consideration made for them because they're a woman, because this is a part of a life cycle. It's biological functions, right? It's actually the perpetuation of population. Like in order for humanity to keep going, people have to procreate. So making space for procreation in the workplace is not doing a woman a favor. It's doing humanity its just due.
Yeah, it's also allowing for better children to be raised. getting to spend a little bit more time with their parents, with their mother, being able to see them in their professional setting, in their work environment, and not just in the few free moments that they're able to have in between, the hours that they have to work, especially for serious professional women who, aren't working 9 to 5s. They're working, 10, 12, 15, 16-hour days. So I think I agree with you, Summer, is that where society steps up and is able to value and see the whole woman, it does better for society overall. It does better for women. It does better for men. It's better for the children. It's better for the elderly. It allows us to prosper as a society. And I think that, or I hope that we will start making the strides to move in that right direction where we value women more in our society, because really and truly women have given so much to the Virgin Islands, in shaping it to where it is, to where it's going. And I don't think that we have given the where credit is due. I don't think we're giving enough credence to the greatness of Virgin Islands women and how important they are and integral in our society. So, I've had a great time listening to you guys talk, about your own personal lives and struggles as a woman. As much as I think that we do have a certain level of reverence for women in the Virgin Islands and in the Caribbean, I think that there's still this manipulation of the mind that allows certain patriarchal attitudes to come out as well. It's this weird juxtaposition of thought, because I do think that Caribbean men put women higher than maybe in some other places. But in the same breath, there's other attitudes and actions that puts women down. So, hopefully we can get our thoughts clear, straight, and give women the reverence and respect that they deserve because they have done so much for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that, and this will probably be my last comment because I know that we're coming close on time. But I really want Virgin Islanders, and yeah, let me just speak for Virgin Islanders now, to think deeply about what you just said, Frank, because you said the right word, but it's not hypocritical, but it's like we use this time, VI History Month, Women's History Month, Emancipation Day, when we're thinking about all of these historic moments in our history that we celebrate. We talk about Queen, the queens of the fire bond and all of this stuff. Yes, Queen, yes, Empress, all of these things, right? And it's like almost celebrating them for carrying all of the burden for them. It's like men celebrating women for carrying the burden for them, which is again not fair, but also at the same time you're recognizing the strength but then not acknowledging that strength in a capacity that it should be allowed to like really do its thing. It seems a little two-sided, and it sounds negative, but hey, you know what I mean? Like, why say yes, Queen, yes, all of these things, but I don't know if I could vote for you to be here, and just acknowledge that, because you have to face that like in the mirror. You know what I mean? Like face why are we in 2021 and we could celebrate all of these things and acknowledge it once a year or 1 month out of the year, but then forget about that on the first Tuesday in November, or you know what I mean, like during election season when people that you go up to and whisper and say, oh man, I wish that you were running, or I wish that you were doing this, but never support that publicly, forward, you know what I mean, like outwardly. I want us to think deeply about that, because it's really us as a community facing a two-sidedness that's there. And that's all I'll say. I think that's it for me tonight.
Yeah, I think that's important, Sydney. Both what you and Frank said, especially with all the mama's boys that live in the VI and on St. Croix. And so I'm for creating a She Could Be a Mother campaign where that
I like that.
could be the thought, you know, when there's a woman running for office that's qualified. And again, that's the caveat that I'm going to put on this, because I've seen organizations go through the anti-men, and you know, and I'm glad we stayed positive and talked about the powerful and successful and progressive women in VI history. I know a couple names in recent years that maybe not so much, and so that is the caveat, that it should be completely based on equity and based on people that are qualified. But I'd be for the She Could Be a Mother campaign, because I think that that could be pretty dope if people start to think about it in that context. Because again, in the society that we live in, where it might not be recognized by most or many, a number of these women act as mother figures for so many in our community, and so it only makes sense that, you know, we start you know, thinking about them the same way that we think about a lot of these guys that, you know, again, aren't for us, aren't for our best interests, and aren't half as qualified or as intellectual.
So I guess I get to close tonight. Now we got time. Frank can close. I just wanted to say thank you all for being in conversation around this. I think one of the things with that dual nature that you guys mentioned is attention in every human being. And it's something that, first of all, we're doing a great thing by naming it. I do think that we have a society that loves its women and knows the power of its women, and at the same time is intimidated by that power, that objectifies that power, and actively tries to suppress that power. I think we are extremely clear on the double standard we have for women in this society. It's implicit. Nobody, and part of the problem is nobody wants to own it, right? We all know it exists. Nobody wants to name it. Nobody wants to own it. Nobody wants to correct their own behaviors about it. And as we celebrate the women who have defied it, who have found their way around, above, and like kick their way through it, it's just a reminder that it can be done. Barriers are made to be broken. And what best to break them besides stilettos if you wear them, right? I wear flip-flops, so I'd be breaking mine with flip-flops. And that's just exciting to me, to honor and understand that there are really powerful women in the Virgin Islands who have done so much and paved the way for people like me and Sid to talk about our womanhood in this way. And some of them, like, we have the honor of having them really close to us and be our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, our cousins, our grandma, you know, your neighbor, your kindergarten teacher. So yeah, like, thank you all. And I hope that the work that we do honors you, and that for those who are coming behind us, that they look and see the good work and maybe one day see us as powerful as the women that we came from, right? Keeping the juju around womanness really strong.
That was great. That was great. That was great. You. I will say that the two of you are just as powerful as the women that you come from, and are on the way to being more than powerful. So just continue to do the work that you do and show up the way that you do. So I commend you both and thank you. for all that you do for Virgin Islands, for women, and for the world.
And I just want to shout out Imani Daniel. We miss you because you're right here in my heart.
I was just going to I miss the other ladies in the group. But tonight was a wonderful conversation. I really hope that everybody that tuned in was able to gain something from it. Hopefully this will just be a little bit of a change in perspective, maybe just open up our minds to a little bit of difference in thought in the way that we treat our women here in the Virgin Islands, and the way that we think about them, and the ways that we respect them and value them. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, we produce greatness, especially in our women. And that should be valued, because that greatness does resound and come back and give to us, and makes the Virgin Islands such a great place. So, I think that we should, like you said, revere women all the time, and not just through March, and not just on special holidays. And hopefully we will get to that equitable balance in our society sooner than later, so I don't want to get long-winded on this end, but Virgin Islands women are great. We love you. We respect you. Thank you. Thank you to the great woman who runs this WTJX, Tanya Singh, for giving us this platform to have these wonderful discussions. And thank you everybody out there for tuning in every Tuesday night, 6:30 p.m. on WTJX, your PBS station in the Virgin Islands, and NPR Radio. Follow us on Instagram at PoliTalks VI, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. We love you. Good night.